All right, what's up, everybody? After nearly a year off, I'm back with Mark and Matt, and we're back today for some special news because Doug Pederson, the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, has been fired. After how many years was he there? He was there for, 5 years, I think it was? 5 seasons. He went 42, 37-1, won a Super Bowl, first Super Bowl in Philadelphia Eagles history, and he was fired today. So I guess we'll start with Mark. So Mark usually is very opinionated on this kind of stuff. Mark, was it the smart move to fire Doug Pederson?
So initially, the story broke 2-3 hours ago, I think. Initially, I was against it because Super Bowl winning coaches don't grow on trees. So it's very hard to find a coach capable of winning a Super Bowl, and he's done that. But after the rest of the reports we've heard about where Lurie and Howie, who are very buddy-buddy from what we hear, they don't trust Doug because Doug wanted more control over his own staff, which I think a head coach should be able to do. But based on the reports that Doug wanted to promote the offensive coordinator and the defensive coordinator positions from within rather than going with outside hires, is concerning to me because we've already seen what the internal coaches in the organization are doing, and they went 4-11-1 this year. So obviously an outside hire would be the way to go, logically, what everyone would think. And Doug didn't want to do that. So I guess I can't blame Lurie and Howie for not trusting Doug to build his own staff after seeing what's happened the past 2 years when he has built his own staff, replacing people. But so I think now I would say that the decision was probably the right decision, but I don't know if I trust Howie and Lurie to make the right hire at this point because
that's what I was going to ask Matt. I mean, Matt, was the right guy fired here? Should it have been Pederson or should it have been Roseman who should have been going here?
So, starting, I don't know, probably like week 8 when we all sort of realized that Wentz was not playing the way he played, the previous 4 years, and that he was clearly something was off. I personally was calling for Pederson's head. And the whole coaching staff. I didn't think he ran Miles Sanders enough. Ran enough in generally. He didn't get Wentz. He didn't move Wentz out of the pocket on rollouts or sprint outs. And I just thought he wasn't because we saw also what Wentz could do last December and before he was injured in 17 or 18. Besides the point. He was effective on the move, throwing on the run, play action shots. I mean, he's got a cannon. He's mobile. You would think you can marry those things together and run a successful offense. But so then I don't know who it was, but someone started pointing out to me about Roseman about halfway through the season, and I was like that sort of makes sense. I mean, what has he done to better the roster since the Super Bowl run? Because I mean, you gotta admit he did a great job. I mean, he brought in Alshon. Alshon played great. Veteran presence, Chris Long, Corey Graham, although Corey Graham didn't play great. You saw him make some moves, and you were like I think it's gonna help the team. It did help the team. They won a Super Bowl, so you give them the benefit of the doubt. But then you see what happens this year. You see them players Roseman draft either don't progress or they don't get better in Philly and they do better when they go elsewhere. See Ronald Darby, Rasul Douglas, Will Parks,
Nelson Aguilar.
Yeah, Aguilar had career year this year, career highs.
So there's a little disconnect there, but then you look at that Howie has drafted one Pro Bowler since I want to say 2012. I think that's the year, and it's Carson Wentz. So there's, he did well to build the back end of the roster with veterans to win the Super Bowl a few years ago. But really, if you look at his success in the draft and offseason, it's really not there. I mean, he did lose control of the team to Chip Kelly for a reason, right? So it's tough. So I was calling for Pederson, but in reality, I think Roseman's the guy who needs to go. But Lurie sees Howie in that like protege / son lens because he's been with the team since he literally, graduated from Fordham.
Yeah, he started as an intern.
I mean, Reed brought him in as an intern. And the
Yeah.
biggest problem I have with Howie is he's not a football guy. I could be wrong in saying this, but I don't think he's played a snap of football in his life. And if he has, it was pre-college.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
He was brought in to be the cap guy, the numbers guy. And look at what he's known as in the league, a cap wizard, right? He's really good at that. But on the player development and player spotting areas or player evaluation, I don't think he's done a good job at all. I think he's done a piss poor job, to be honest.
So, Mark, should Doug Pederson have gotten another year? So I know this year was obviously below expectations, but they made the playoffs last year. They're not that far removed from winning a Super Bowl. They still have a lot of guys on the roster, at least for this year. They probably won't have many of them back next year.
Yeah.
But they've had only 2 losing seasons in his time with the Eagles. It was this year, and it was his first year with the team. So is it too soon? Was it too soon to fire Doug Pederson, or is this just an issue where they were butting heads and they could never overcome this?
Hold up, I'm gonna butt in. I feel like Schefter here. Bleeding Green Nation just tweeted that it sounds like Lurie is pretty explicitly saying they're going to rebuild, bunker down for 2021.
Yep, I'd agree with that, and that kind of leads into my answer because I think Sam hit the nail on the head. Where I think they're just they were butting heads too much, which goes back to last year. So last year, Pederson went out and said he's not firing Mike Groh, who was the Eagles' offensive coordinator at the time. And then 2 days later, it was announced that the Eagles fired Mike Groh, and it was heavily implied that Jeffrey Lurie, the owner, weighed into that decision. And then Doug decided to not go with an offensive coordinator at all this year. They went with like a by committee approach for a passing game, run game coordinator, something like that. And we saw how that worked out. So I think, again, Doug wanted control, and Lurie said nope, and just pulled the plug. Because they had a meeting today or yesterday where Doug went over his vision, and then that was pretty much the reason he got fired is because they disagreed with the vision for the future of the team. So I can't blame Lurie. If you're the owner of the team, you want to trust your gut and have a head coach at the helm who you can trust to run a team. But at the end of the day, if you can't trust that guy, then I see no reason why he shouldn't be fired. So yeah, I think bottom line, they were just butting heads, and there was that relationship was fractured. So,
and if I remember right, Doug Pederson said maybe like 2 or 3 weeks ago he felt very confident he was going to be back for 2021. So it feels like this meeting, whenever this happened, was there earlier today or yesterday? It feels like that meeting, and the idea Pederson was pushing to have Press Taylor elevated to the offensive coordinator spot. It feels like that was a big part of this whole firing process, right, Matt?
Well, I didn't know this, but apparently Pederson I read it a couple days ago. I didn't know it beforehand. Apparently Pederson views Press Taylor as his protege. So, I mean, if the owner's going to tell you, and he apparently something happened last year I read that also came out today that Pederson, when they made him fire Mike Groh, he threatened to quit, and the Eagles just didn't take him seriously. So it sort of sounds like, he wanted to keep Groh last year, and now Taylor's his protege, and he wants to bump him to offense coordinator, and this time he's like, well, you're not going to let me have autonomy over my coaching staff, like fire me basically. And that's tough because Press Taylor clearly wasn't getting it done as the quarterbacks coach. He was a significant downgrade from John DeFilippo during the first 2 years of Wentz's time in Philly. And I think you could see that because you've read all the other reports about Wentz, it's that DeFilippo and Reich kept his head on straight and, made him run the offense. Well, it sounds like under, the Press Taylor and offense coordinator by committee, I think it sounds like he's got maybe too many voices in his ear, and so that hurt. But yeah, I mean, if someone's gonna fire your protege, why would you want to be there? I think so. Maybe it was time mutual. It was mutual. It was time for everyone to move on, which is crazy because it's the third fastest firing of a Super Bowl winning head coach ever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there's some stuff I've seen even during the season now after the firing where Doug Pederson says he's basically at peace with parting ways with Philadelphia. And to me, it seems like he's not – obviously you don't want to be fired, but he's not upset about being fired. He's not happy either, but he's not upset about being fired because I guess the situation got to the point where it was just so much where his vision or what he wanted to do was so different from what the organization or what Howie Roseman wanted to do. That just never was going to work out. But if you're rebuilding now, I mean, if you're going to tear this whole thing down in the offseason because you have so many people who are going to be free agents or so many people are going to cut because of the cap space they have, it's so awful right now. Is it even worth hiring like a long-term head coach? Because you're going to lose for probably 2 or 3 more years. This is not going to turn around in offseason.
Yeah, this is where I have some strong opinions. So to me, I think it's clear, and every Eagles fan should be concerned because to me, I think it's clear that Lurie and Howie are clearly in charge of this team. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. So they're going to be in charge of hiring a head coach. And the problem with me, the reality I see happening is they want someone that is going to come in and be their yes man. So they're not going to butt heads with. They're not going to want control. Howie's going to have final say over the roster, which is what I think him and Lurie want. I don't want that to be the way it is, but I just think that's the reality of the situation. I would love for them to hire a coach who they think is the right pick, absolutely. Who, if they want control, they feel comfortable giving it to them. But, I mean, they fired Doug for a reason because Doug wanted more control and he was tired of people telling him what to do. So I think the reality of the situation is they're going to hire a 2-year, 3-year temporary head coach just to kind of be a puppet role. And we're going to have a lot of struggling seasons upcoming here as Eagles fans.
Yeah, I mean, if they go that route, if they just go, they rebuild this roster and Howie Roseman's image of what a Super Bowl contender looks like, and they just hire a coach to come in and say, yes, sir, yes, and not really object to anything, they're not going to win anything in the near future. I mean, that's just winning doesn't happen like that. Like if the GM and the head coach can't work, and then you throw in the owner in that equation. I mean, if I'm a head coach, why the heck would you want to come to Philly right now?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Like, what incentive do I have to go coach this team if I'm not going to get control over my roster? If it's a mess as it is, and you just saw that the owner and the GM clearly don't have good relationships with coaches that have only been here for 5 years and won you a Super Bowl. So the organization to me just is a mess from all the way at the top down.
You see Pederson didn't have autonomy when he left. Well, it's essentially why he left. But I will say that's Pederson's own fault because after Reich and DeFilippo were outside hires to the Colts after McDaniels bailed, and then I want to say DeFilippo went to the Vikings as the coordinator.
Yeah, man.
Rather than bring in like a new quarterbacks coach and a new just strictly offensive coordinator, he promoted Mike Grove from within, and then I don't think he had an offense coordinator after that year. And then Mike Grove went to offense coordinator last year, Press Taylor to quarterbacks, and then they did the same thing, offense coordinator by committee this year. So I think, if you think about it, Doug really dug himself a hole on his own because once those two guys left, he didn't fill their positions with guys of equal coaching ability. At least that seems sort of clear to me. But like I said, if you're a coach, right, it comes down to do you believe in Carson Wentz or Jalen Hurts, I suppose. But if you're a coach, you look and you see, I'm probably not going to end up having autonomy over my coaching staff, even if they say I'm going to at first. Because if stuff goes sideways, it's going to be, the owners say, or the highway. And then on top of that, do you believe in either of the quarterbacks? But on top of all of that, do you believe in the general manager? Do you believe in the guy who's going to evaluate and bring your players in? And or listen to your scouts? And if I'm a head coach, I don't think I'm getting those things from Howie Roseman.
No, that's probably the concern for a lot of coaching candidates. And also, you look at the jobs out there, like the Chargers are available. The Chargers have a lot of great players on their roster. Frankly, the Chargers should have been much better than they were this year. They went 7-9. They should have won 9 or 10 games. Chargers is a very good job. Jacksonville is going to get Trevor Lawrence. They have like 5 or 6 selections in the first 55 picks this year. And they have like over $100 million in cap space.
I'm going to say they have the most cap space in the league.
Most attractive job in the league.
Better spot.
Jets.
Houston's got nothing, but Houston has Deshaun Watson. You have a top 5 quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah,
So
but he might be out too.
Oh yeah, he might. That's decided by basically if Deshaun Watson wants to be in Houston anymore or not.
Yeah,
but
look, that's another. Houston's another place where the ownership structure is shaky.
Yeah. Well, you talk about Houston, talk about Philadelphia, talk about Dallas. Like Mike McCarthy's got to be a yes man for Jerry Jones in Dallas right now.
I think I sent you guys this like an hour ago. I said, well, look at Dallas and Jerry Jones and owner GM. It's his way or the highway. Like why do you think Mike McCarthy is there failing with Aaron Rodgers in the middle of his prime, rather than some new young gun head coach, which is all the rage in the NFL? It's because McCarthy's not going to question Jerry Jones, or if he is, he's not going to do so publicly.
No.
Yeah. The only coaching jobs I think could be worse than Philadelphia right now. Detroit just doesn't have a lot of talent outside of Matt Stafford, and the Jets, because the Jets have a couple defensive pieces and that's about it. And then it's Philadelphia, because you're not going to have Zach Ertz next year. Zach Ertz is going to be gone.
Probably.
You're not going to have probably some of the offensive line. Yeah, you're probably not going to have some of the offensive line or defensive line that you have this year, because you can't pay all those guys.
Nope.
So you're looking at how much of the roster that you have currently, how much of that talent is actually going to be there next year, because of all the casualties you're going to have. You're going to lose a lot of veterans. So I think it's, if you're looking at Philadelphia for a coaching job, you're like, how many of these guys are actually going to be around next year? You don't have a ton of draft capital that's going to make it in a quick rebuild. This is a long-term process.
Of course.
Look, if I'm the Eagles, there are two guys on my radar. Eric Bieniemy, obviously, out of Kansas City, and Brian Daboll, or Dable, I don't know how to say his name.
Dable,
offensive coordinator. Honestly, either of those guys, and Mark's shaking his head, he wants Jim Caldwell. He's going to say it, which boggles my mind, but I'd love to hear him say why.
Yeah, Mark, can you just go into your Jim Caldwell take now? Just go.
I could, because I could go into the why I'm against the two he said, but yeah, essentially Caldwell is a QB guru, because you look at what he did in Indianapolis with Peyton Manning. They went, I think, 15-1 or 14-2 that season. Granted, they didn't make the Super Bowl that year. Actually, no, they did. That's the year they went to the Super Bowl and lost to New Orleans. But they went. Look what he did with Peyton Manning. He kind of helped develop Matt Stafford into the player he is now. You could argue that. So I think I think most Eagles fans would say what I'm about to say. If you want to keep Wentz as your quarterback moving forward, I think you're going to have to hire a coach who is QB centered. And Caldwell has done it his whole career with developing quarterbacks and getting them on the right track. So yeah, you could go with Bieniemy or Daboll from Buffalo, but I don't see those guys working out. So we'll see what happens. I'm going to sit back and enjoy the ride, because I know the Eagles are probably not going to do what I want them to do, just like every other fan is going to say. So it's going to be a quiet offseason for me, I think, until we get to the draft, because that's my favorite part of the offseason.
Yeah, I know you want to tag in here, but let me hit Mark with some stuff real quick. So Caldwell took over the Detroit Lions in 2014.
Uh-huh.
That was Stafford's only Pro Bowl year. But before that, the 3 years before that, Stafford threw for 5,000 yards and 41 touchdowns in 2011, 4,967 yards in 2012, and 4,650 yards in 2013. So let's not act like he developed Matt Stafford. And he took over in 2009 for Peyton Manning, the Colts. But Peyton Manning had been in the NFL since 1998. So there's no quarterback development here, Mark. These guys were already Pro Bowl caliber players, or in Peyton Manning's case, an MVP before Caldwell showed up. There's no development there. If you're talking about development, Brian Dable working with Josh Allen, who just had the biggest jump in NFL history for a quarterback from year to year, I think he's the guy. I don't think it's not Jim Caldwell. Jim Caldwell didn't develop quarterbacks.
And okay, that's a fair point. But I'd hesitate to jump to someone in Dable's case where Josh Allen just had his big year, and yes, it was a phenomenal year because he's in the MVP conversation. But I would hesitate because it's still only one good year. And I also hesitate with Bieniemy because Andy Reid calls the plays in Kansas City. And I'm sure he has a voice in that offensive that planning room, that planning board, whatever you want to call it. But we would just be doing the same thing again because Pederson was the offensive coordinator in Kansas City. So yeah, obviously Kansas City has an electric offense, but he's not the guy in charge there. So I would want someone who is in charge of that offensive room. So in that case, it would probably be the guy up in Buffalo because McDermott calls the plays on defense. So that's just my opposition to that.
Mark, I will say Doug Pederson was in the Bieniemy role, but he came to Philly and won a Super Bowl. So I wouldn't say the track record on that's too terrible.
I guess, yeah. I'm hesitant to do it because look what happened now. We're 4 years since we won a Super. No, 3 years.
I think with any like alpha type coaching personality, I mean, I think whether it's Bieniemy, whether it's Pederson, Dabo, Caldwell, whoever you want to pick, anybody with that type of personality is going to want autonomy over their coaching staff and isn't going to want to be a yes man. So if that is actually in fact what specifically Howie and Lurie are looking for, I mean, we're gonna end up with like Adam Gase as our head coach.
Of course, someone who's just going to take the fall in 2 years from now and get fired again after 5-11 or 4-12 season.
I will say, if you're looking to tank, Adam Gase is an expert in that area. He can really help you out. So that might be a good case, and you're trying to get the first overall pick.
They won won those last 2 games.
If he was an expert in tanking, Trevor Lawrence would be a Jet.
That's true, but he's probably going to be a Jaguar.
So what you're saying is you want Doug Marrone is who you're looking for instead.
I guess.
I don't know.
That can be arranged.
Well, if you look at it, Marrone did a better job. Won week 1 and then lost 15 straight.
Yeah, exactly. There's a little bit of hope at the very beginning, and then everything was crashed down the rest of the way. But let me put a hypothetical to you. What if Chicago fires Matt Nagy? Are you putting a call into Matt Nagy?
Nope.
Depends. It depends on if you think the Mitch Trubisky experience was a cause of Nagy, like not being like a good enough coach to put him in position to succeed, or whether you think that, well, obviously he was drafted too high, or whether that you just think he doesn't have the talent of a first-round quarterback, and that's why Trubisky didn't succeed. You got to evaluate that first before you decide if you want Nagy or not.
Mark, you seem all out on the idea.
Because I think it's the same thing. Nagy was also, I believe he was also a Chiefs offensive coordinator.
He was.
Before he went to Yeah, so I can't get behind doing that again because, yeah, Pederson won a Super Bowl, but Nagy's probably going to get fired either this year or next. So the experiment, it just hasn't worked out in most cases.
Well, they're saying they're going to keep Nagy and re-sign Mitchell Trubisky.
That's a whole other conversation.
That'd be funny. That'd be funny to laugh at over the offseason. But
if those two are hitched together,
I'm not doing it. If I'm the Eagle, the only coordinator I'm hiring is Dable, however you say it. I'm sorry, up in Buffalo. If I have to do someone who's currently in a coordinator position, personally, I'd love for them to hire a defensive-minded head coach, but
it won't happen. But what if Robert Saleh, a guy in San Francisco, defensive coordinator in San Francisco, what if he pops up? He's probably going to go to a better situation than Philadelphia.
No offense.
But if he popped up and say he took the Eagles job for whatever reason, is that something you would be happy about?
Of course. I think he's a phenomenal candidate, a very dark horse.
I'd be excited about him.
I know most of the fans, and you kind of have to go with what the mainstream says, otherwise you get ripped apart. Most of the fans want an offensive-minded guy because they want to keep Wentz, and they want to do everything in their power to get Wentz to stay, which is a whole other topic that I won't get into because I would be talking for another 2 hours. But the reason people want offensive-minded guys, specifically quarterback developers like Bieniemy or Dable, is they want to keep Wentz. So in that aspect, obviously a defensive coach would be a downgrade to them. But to me, I would love a defensive-minded coach to come in here. I loved Jim Schwartz, another unpopular opinion, because it was really like the Eagles had 2 head coaches, and Schwartz kind of did whatever he wanted on defense, not personnel-wise, which is, again, part of the issue we're talking about is how much control Howie Roseman should have. But I would love a defensive-minded coach to come in here and take over.
So, to respond to Mark, offensive mind, it's not just because not just because of Wentz. I think we want an offensive-minded head coach because I've said this before. Like, if Wentz thinks that he should walk into the Novacare complex next year and be handed the starting job, and he shouldn't have to be in a quarterback battle, et cetera, then, I mean, after June 1st, either move him in some form because that's like clearly he doesn't fit with the Philadelphia mentality then.
Right.
And now, with that being said, I don't think Jalen Hurts is the answer. Maybe he could be, but currently he's not. Had he gone 3-1 or 4-0, won the division and hosted a playoff game, we're totally different conversation. But he did what a lot of rookie quarterbacks do. There's no film on them. They play well in their first few starts, or in his case, played well in the first half of all the games. And then defenses adjust, and he's not ready to be a starting quarterback, and he gets shut down in the second half or for certain games. That happened. So we want an offensive coordinator to come in and get the offense humming again, right? Because overall Schwartz's defense has been good as long as he's been here. And so like that's why I like a guy like Dable, right? The Josh Allen this year. He coached under Belichick for a bunch of years. He won college football playoff with Alabama as their offense coordinator and QB's coach, and now he's on the Bills, and the Bills are good. And the head coach is Sean McDermott, another Andy Reid guy, Mark.
Yes, no, that I know. He was a scapegoat 10 years ago when they lost that playoff game.
And then same thing. Bieniemy's been with the Chiefs since Reid took over, and so he's gone through the whole process of the rebuild, Mahomes era, and now he's here. So I'd love it. I mean, I think a guy like Robert Saleh, I think great energy, great defense. I think he's definitely a good option. But like most fans, we want to lean offense. We've seen the anemic offense for the majority of the past 3 years, and no one wants any more of that.
Yeah, and so he's going to be a great hiring somewhere, I believe, because he worked with the 49ers defense this year. That's a defense that traded Forrest Buckner in the offseason. Nick Bosa missed most of the year. Richard Sherman missed most of the year, and they still finished top 5 in yards allowed. I'm pretty sure. So they still had a great finish for a defense that was missing basically 3 or 4 best players from last year. I'm going to throw out a couple other names here that popped up on my radar. What about Joe Brady? He was the offensive coordinator, I believe, for LSU last year when they won the national championship game. Now he's in Carolina. He's pretty young. He's one of those young coordinators everyone's talking about. So Joe Brady's a name I've heard. Another one I've heard is Arthur Smith, the offensive coordinator for the Tennessee Titans, is also up there.
So I've heard both of those names. I think Arthur Smith is less sexy between the two of those. Just the style of offense the Titans run. I don't think the Eagles. I mean, unless you think Sanders is, I don't think the Eagles have the running back for that style of offense, for that type of power run.
No.
And then the Joe Brady is interesting because he was at LSU and he was very good. And where is he this year? He's with the Panthers, right?
Carolina.
So
Panthers, Carolina.
Teddy Bridgewater with no Christian McCaffrey the majority of the year, and I mean that offense was. I don't know where they finished, but at least eye test wise, they moved the ball and they created chunk plays. Then again, you look at Curtis Samuel, DJ Moore, Teddy Bridgewater, Robbie Anderson. Like that's the thing the Eagles haven't had in years, which is talent in the skill positions. So specifically wide receiver. It's interesting. It's my guess is that the Eagles will do what they did when they hired Pederson, and they're gonna whoever their head coach selection is not going to be sexy or flashy.
Yeah, I agree with both your statements. I think Joe Brady's far too young to take over an NFL team. I mean, say what you will about Sean McVay when he took over and what the state of the Rams are now. I wouldn't like either of those hires. I think you have to pick someone who is clearly established and has a good leadership role and can help develop your players, specifically, like I've been talking about with the quarterback position, whether it's going to be Wentz or Hurts. I think for sure there's going to be a competition.
It better be.
in training camp. And that Wentz jersey in my closet could be gone at this time next year. So we'll see what happens with that. I do want to bring up, I just got an alert. So Bieniemy is the favorite right now, along with Mike Kafka. They have the two best odds to be the Eagles' next head coach. And Kafka, I believe, is the quarterback's coach in Kansas City. So
is he? Because I was just gonna say I saw Kafka's name pop up earlier, but I didn't know where is he. I didn't know where he's from.
And apparently Lincoln Riley is at the top of Lurie's list.
Yeah.
Which
That I think that is single-handedly the worst name I've heard all day.
You
take over
that
this
would be
team.
rough. Well, that
would just be Lurie not learning from his mistakes.
With Chip.
With Chip.
That would be. We would finally get to see what it would have been like if we drafted Mariota when we had Chip Kelly, because if Lincoln Riley comes in here and has Jalen Hurts, then that will finally answer that question. But that would be a mess.
Yeah, I'm looking at a tweet here.
Maybe this is a question you can answer me. When was the last time that a Big 12 head coach made the transition to the NFL and had success?
Pete Carroll.
Yeah.
USC,
Pete Carroll. I don't know where USC. We're talking about just collegiate coaches. Pete Carroll coming from USC would be the one. Pete Carroll had experience. Pete Carroll had experience in the NFL before going to USC. So he had been in the NFL for a long time. He had worked under some really good head coaches before going back to Seattle. But you're talking about specifically a conference that has just basically.
I'm talking
like a power, like the Big Five, the Power Five, they call them.
Well, I wasn't. I mean, Power Five. Yeah, we answered in that sense. But I was going mainly for like that Big 12 or Pac-12 electric offense with bad defensive play, like that style of football.
I know what you're saying. Like no defense, all offense. Try to score like a bazillion points.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about. Maybe, I guess the most recent guy who would be similar. I don't think he was from those conferences, but the most recent guy would be similar. Would probably be like a Cliff Kingsbury, who's going to get fired in Arizona either probably this coming year or next year. He's going to get fired at some point. Cliff Kingsbury in Arizona has been a mistake.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like because I don't like these college coaches. Like they've got great teams at the college level. It just seems like, I mean, I'm probably really negative on it because of Chip Kelly, but it seems like the whole come to the offense, score as many points as quick as you can thing. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, the only Big 12 coach I know right now that's in the NFL is Matt Rule. He went from Baylor last year. He's now in Carolina. But we really haven't gotten to see. We haven't gotten to see whether or not he's going to fail or succeed yet.
Yeah, he was also at Temple beforehand, so he's not like I wouldn't consider Matt Rule like a chuck it up and try and score as many points as you can. I mean, I could be wrong. So.
Yeah, Charlie. There's also, I'm looking at a quote here where Jeffrey Lurie said that I would expect Deuce Staley to be a candidate for the head coaching spot. Is that even in the realm of possibility? I mean, for Deuce Staley, first off, I think just getting the OC job might be just a jump up for him. That's let alone the head coaching job.
I have strong opinions on Deuce Staley. I think he has more than earned like I was shocked when he was not promoted to offensive coordinator after last season.
I second that.
So I think Deuce has continuously been, how do I say this gently? Disrespected, yeah, by the Philadelphia Eagles organization. Because he was a special teams like quality control coach or something under Andy. Yeah, he played for Andy and then came back as like I said, quality control coach. Chip Kelly came, kept him on as running backs coach. Pederson came and kept him on as running backs coach, and he was the assistant head coach too, I believe. But he wasn't even made like run game coordinator. The Eagles' run game coordinator was their defensive line coach last season. So it's
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that helps buy into how Lurie feels about Doug and the decisions he's made. But I think Deuce Staley has at least earned an interview. He was interviewed last time before they hired Doug Pederson. I think he deserves an interview. If they hire him as head coach, I won't be ashamed of that because
I tell you what, the players would love it.
Yeah, and Deuce is a popular locker room guy. That's a great way to put it. He's relatively new, or he's a recent player. He played in the early 2000s, so I think he can have success as a head coach. I don't know what his decision making would be like. I think he would have to go with another Pederson type move and hire a defensive coordinator who can kind of act like a second head coach and say, okay, you're in charge of the defense. You do whatever you want to do, stuff like that. But I think Deuce Staley would be fine as a head coaching hire. I think it would be a temporary one because he would be a scapegoat 3 years from now when the Eagles are hopefully towards the end of their rebuild here. So I think Deuce Staley has earned it. I would not have a problem with that as a fan.
Yeah, I mean, you see what he's done throughout his coaching career. I mean, he's coached McCoy, Sanders. I mean, I'm just trying to think of more like the backup guys, like to McCoy. What was it? Buckhalter and
Buckhalter.
I mean, you see now the Boston Scott, Corey Clement in the Super Bowl. Jordan Howard first. You see a lot of productions from the running backs. You see a lot of big plays from the running backs, and you see the backups and the backup of the backups. You see them contribute, whether it's in the offense game plan in the few snaps a game or on specials, returning returns and whatnot. So Deuce is one of the few coaches on the offensive side of the ball in the past 5 years that can say that they've what's the word? Where they've helped improve the guys in their position group.
Yeah.
Develop. Thank you. I don't think you can say the same for a lot of the other coaches, specifically quarterback and wide receiver.
Yeah, and real briefly here, you were talking about coaches from the Big 12. The only two Big 12 coaches with ties to the Big 12 in the NFL currently that I can see are Cliff Kingsbury, because Texas Tech job where he's working. He wasn't even the head coach there, but he was going to be hired there. And then Baylor, Matt Rule. I think Matt Rule obviously has the better chance of succeeding of those two of those guys. Philip Kingsbury's already failed to some degree by not making the playoffs this year. There's one guy from college football right now that I would think would be a good fit in the NFL. There's one guy, and it's Northwestern head coach Pat Fitzgerald. Other than that, I don't think there's a guy in the college football ranks that would want to move up to the NFL. I think Pat Fitzgerald at Northwestern, he kind of does a little bit of everything. He'd probably be a good fit because Northwestern's not like a powerhouse program, but they've made like 2 or 3 Big Ten conference championship games in the past 4 or 5 years. So
and
they played above their level. They played above their punching level. So I think that he's got to make it some tension. But I don't know. Is there any chance that Philadelphia makes the right coaching hire this offseason?
Nope.
So what would the right coaching hire be? Like offensive-minded guy who can figure out the quarterback situation and get the offense humming? Is that what you're considering the right hire, Teets?
Yeah, that's what I would be looking at. Somebody who can. Again, the injuries are somewhat luck, so I can't say make a team roster healthy, but just get something rolling to the point where you have Carson Wentz playing comfortably. You're using Miles Sanders the right way, which is using him a lot more than he's been using right now, and just start to get the offense moving to a spot where it's no longer bottom 10 in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, I think the two guys to do that are probably Dable out of Buffalo or Bieniemy out of Kansas City. Whether you like that Bieniemy is like the secondary offensive mind behind Reed or whatever, I mean, I think it's got to be one of those two. I mean, unless I'm missing something, but I think when you look at both their records, this is the problem I had with Howie and the Jalen Reagor pick. Would you rather hire or draft someone from the Big 12, we'll say, who there's no defense and lots of points scored, right? And Reagor didn't even put up great statistics at TCU, but that was because quarterback play. Would you rather take that guy, or would you rather take the national championship winning, Brian Dable, Alabama offensive coordinator, Justin Jefferson, wide receiver LSU? Would you rather take the guy who has that experience in a winning culture, winning locker room, or are you gonna draft or are you gonna sign the flashy pick because his offense put up 40 plus points a game last year in the Big 12? I think that's what we're looking at. For me, and we argue on this all the time, but I think championship caliber and like big time players count more than the right pick or the right hire.
Yeah.
Mark, you're a Jalen Reagor kind of guy. Do you feel insulted in any way by taking a shot?
I wouldn't. So yeah, I'll say live for everyone now. My original prediction was Reagor was going to be Rookie of the Year, Offensive Rookie of the Year. That's obviously not.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh at you like that. It's just like
No.
in hindsight, it's so funny.
Of course. So I'm willing to give him another shot. I think the whole Eagles org was a mess this year, so I'm not ready to point the finger at anyone except probably Howie Roseman. But player-wise, I'm not ready to point fingers. Even Carson Wentz, and you guys know how outspoken I've been about that. But I'm willing to give him another shot as long as he's willing to compete for it. But I'm willing to give Reagor another shot as well. So we'll see what happens. I'm expecting them to draft a receiver between Chase or Smith at 6 this upcoming April. But I don't think that's a knock at Reagor. I just think the more dynamic playmakers you have, the better. There's no reason to not do it. So
I actually think after watching Reagor play this year, like he definitely seems like he can be really explosive. I just don't think he was used correctly.
Hey, that's exactly it too. And I'm gonna knock Wentz here a bit, but there were times where Reagor, among other wide receivers, were open and Wentz just couldn't hit him. So, and I hope Wentz fixes it and can come back and be the starter next year, or at least compete to be the starter. But if the new coach comes in and says, "Hey, Hurts is going to be the guy moving forward," or even if they, God forbid, if they draft, if they draft like Lance at 6 or something like that,
Factory.
yeah. Oh my God. But we'll see. You know, I'm going to put all my trust in the head coach because I can't really do anything else at that point. So whoever is the starter week 1, I'm going to back it. If it's Wentz, Hurts, or option number 3, we'll see what happens.
Do we think that it is in the realm of possibility that either A, the Eagles draft a quarterback at pick 6, which would probably be the third quarterback off the board, or B, either probably trade down and then draft someone like a Mac Jones in the teens or early 20s?
I wouldn't put it against it. It depends what the new head coach comes in and thinks. You know, I think it's easy for us to say.
No, but it doesn't matter what the head coach thinks, because if the head coach had anything to say, they would have taken Justin Jefferson at 21 and Jeremy Chin at 53, I think.
Yeah.
No, if you trade down and get a quarterback, or you just stay put and get a quarterback, you're absolutely insane. And what you're doing is something along the lines of like the process 76ers. You're doing something that kind of level of like trying to outsmart everyone else by just being idiots.
Well, that kind of worked sometimes. They got 2 players out of that.
Sam Hinkie gets way more hate than he deserves.
Yeah.
Way more hate than he deserves.
But I think it's in the cards.
Not to mention, the process is back in the building with Morey, because Morey is from the Hinkie coaching tree, or Hinkie GM tree.
They were together in Houston, right?
Yes, they were.
So
I don't think it's out of the question for them to draft a quarterback at 6. I certainly wouldn't be happy about it, but I mean, it is what it is.
I think
and if you do, Carson Wentz has to be gone, right?
Wentz has got to be on, and it'll probably be a competition. But then, so what? Do you do a competition between Hurts and the new guy? Because what's the point then? I don't think anyone you take at 6, because Lawrence and Fields are probably going to be gone. So I don't think anyone you take at 6 is going to be better than Jalen Hurts is. Like, I don't think Mac Jones is better than Jalen Hurts as a starting NFL quarterback. Or Zach Wilson.
Zach Wilson, the guy from BYU, looks really good.
I wouldn't take him over Hurts. I've watched the tape. He's good, but I don't know. For some reason, my gut says don't go with him. He'll probably be the third quarterback off the board, or maybe Trey Lance, but we'll see.
If the Eagles are actually considering a quarterback at 6, that means you've got 2 quarterbacks gone the first time, Sewell gone in the top 5, and then who?
Probably receiver.
Probably receiver. Chase
Parsons
Smith, and who?
Parsons will go top 5 probably. I can't imagine he goes.
You think Parsons goes top 5?
Yeah, probably.
Really?
So
I wouldn't put it past.
Guys,
I wouldn't put it past being Parsons or Surtain, the corner from Alabama. I wouldn't put it past one of the defensive guys going in the top 5.
Yeah. So
Okay,
Matt, what are you
fair
saying?
enough.
You're saying quarterbacks go 1-2 to the Jets.
if quarterbacks go 1-2, or say two quarterbacks in the top three, Penny Sewell rounds out the top three, I think. Because if he falls to the Bengals, Joe Burrow's getting a franchise left tackle.
Yeah, but Miami picks at 3.
I know, but I guess Miami could take him too, right?
I think Miami
just drafted a left tackle last year in the first round in Austin Jackson.
Yeah, they're not taking another one. They're probably going to go wide receiver, or Parsons could go 3 to Miami too.
Look, I just think that either Jamar Chase or Devontae Smith is probably going to be there at 6.
Yeah,
absolutely. One of them has to be.
Maybe both of them.
Howie's got to pull the trigger on the right guy.
Right? Isn't it a no-brainer, or am I just an Eagles fan? Just that's too hopeful.
You're just a smart Eagles fan, hoping that they'll make the right pick. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I guess. I mean,
that's too much to ask, and you know it.
What's like you look at that team, you look at the offense. Wentz, Goddard, Ertz, Sanders. Up until all the injuries this year, it was a top 3 line in the NFL. Well, I mean, they're getting older. That's besides the point. Like, I don't get it. I don't get how they haven't been able to get their hands on a top tier wide receiver in the first 5 years of Wentz's career. I don't get it. It boggles my mind.
Alshon was pretty good. That's that first year.
Alshon was good. His first year.
1.5 years, really.
Yeah.
So,
it's agonizing.
But even then, I mean, Alshon, that first year, Alshon had like 800 receiving yards in the first year with Philadelphia.
Yeah.
He's never been a 900-yard receiver in Philadelphia. You've never had a top 15 receiver on your roster.
No, that's true.
Yeah, but at least that 1 year, I mean, he was getting separation. He was making the big catches, the possession, the first downs, the red zone targets. He
had a lot of touchdowns that year.
This might be.
It's got to be Wags. It has to.
Yeah, it's got to be him. But
it's look, we're getting. I think the moral of the story, and what we've been getting at this for the past 45 minutes, is that the Eagles, have many holes, players and coaches wise, to address over the next, 3 months before the draft, and on top of that, with their struggles in player evaluation, if they don't get it right this draft, we're going to be in for a long few years here.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, and how about? Go ahead, Mark.
I was just saying I agree.
No, I was gonna say, how about this? You're gonna have more holes open up in the next couple of weeks because you're gonna be cutting people or letting people know that you're not gonna be resigning them.
Yeah.
So you're gonna be having guys, and someone somewhere on that defensive line has to go. Just financially, it doesn't make sense. Someone has to leave that defensive line.
Probably
whether that's Brandon Graham or Fletcher Cox or Barnett, it's someone in that group is going.
If they trade Fletcher Cox and don't get a top 5 draft pick for him,
top 5 rounds or top 5 picks, dude.
He's the Eagles' best player.
Yeah, but no one's gonna invest a top 5 pick in a plus 30 defensive tackle. They'd be lucky to get a third for him, is my opinion.
If they trade Fletcher Cox for a third, they're gonna be the laughing stock.
They have no leverage. Teams know they have to get rid of.
Let me put it this way. The 49ers traded for DeForest Buckner last year, and all it took was the 13th overall pick. So the 49ers traded him to the Colts. DeForest Buckner is 26 years old right now.
Yeah.
If you put Fletcher Cox on the market, I hate to tell you this, but Fletcher Cox right now is probably the 6th best defensive tackle in football.
I agree with that.
Because you got Buckner, Chris Jones, Cam Hayward, Aaron Donald. That's 4. Why am I missing someone? All right, maybe he's 5th. He might be 5th then. But
still,
for the 5th best defensive tackle, you're probably not getting a first-round pick.
No.
So I don't know. is hard because you're going to have to make a lot of tough decisions here. It's going to be exciting for you because there's going to be a lot of news for Philadelphia fans, but you're probably not going to like most of it.
No,
I mean, they're probably going to end up selling for pennies on the dollar, which is terrible.
Well, they don't have a choice. They have no leverage with trading these guys right now because teams know that they're in cap situations. So
yeah, and the worst part about it is, well, you know what? Let me say this: if Howie Roseman can do his cap wizard thing and manage to get the Eagles out of this hole that he put them in over the past 2 seasons between extensions, guarantees, and his cap wizardry by, backloading contracts and phantom years. We can get them out of it and they get some good return on players and overall the team stays intact and they make move and they get under the cap and, do everything you need to do to be successful. Well, maybe we'll have to tone down the rhetoric on him a little bit, but I don't see it happening. Like Mark said, what leverage do you have? Ertz wants a big deal. You're not going to give it to him because he hasn't performed like a top 3 tight end this season, and he's getting older, right? So he wants big money. Who else is gonna want big money? Help me out here.
Barnett is due for.
Yeah, I'm looking for it right now. I'm looking for free agents for Philadelphia this year.
Barnett's due.
Barnett extension.
I mean, you just gave big play Slay a ton of money, and he had a subpar year.
Well, he also was hurt a lot, but I gave him the benefit of the doubt. Jalen Mills is a guy who's probably going to, because he's on a 1-year deal, he's probably going to look for a multi-year extension. I would give it to him because I think he played fine, given the circumstances.
I'm a big Mills guy, but
McLeod, I think, who had a really good season. He was probably the shining star on that defense.
I don't know if did Trayvon LeBlanc get a lot of snaps this year or not. So LeBlanc's up for contract.
He barely played, which was a shame because he played pretty well whenever he was thrown in there too over the past 2 seasons. But
Roby Coleman's up there.
Get him out.
New contract.
Get him out of there. That dude was not good this season.
I'm still amazed by that signing. He went from one of the best slot cornerbacks in the league to one of the worst in 1 year.
Yeah,
crazy. He falls under like the Alshon guys. One awesome year and then nothing. They've got. The fact of the matter is they got a lot of holes. They're going to have a lot of holes a month from now. A lot of holes on the coaching staff. I mean, I would say I would have been much happier if Howie Roseman would have called it what Dombrowski called the Phillies and called it a retool rather than a rebuild. But I guess
I'm just glad he's facing reality. That's what it is. You'd have to be dumb to assume that the Eagles are going to fix this in 3 years. No way.
Yeah,
0%.
They could fix it in 3 years, but that means you have to draft well and you have to sign and you have to have free agent signings.
Yeah.
You got to look at what the Niners have done with Kyle Shanahan and the Bills with McDermott. Chiefs since Reed got there. Pederson was supposed to be that guy, and now he's not. So who is going to lead the team? And if you're right, Mark, we're not going to know who that guy is until 2024.
Probably.
Just not a big fan of Jalen Mills right now. I'll tell you this: I'm looking at Philadelphia's cap space on Spotrac for next year, and not this is cap space, but the way it's made up right now. You have about, I think I screwed up the math, but about 48% of your cap is dedicated to the 4 highest players in your roster. That's Brandon Graham, Alshon, Fletcher Cox, and Carson Wentz right now.
Yeah. You didn't see. Well, Alshon is probably going to get cut. And I think, hasn't there been talks about extending BG to lighten his cap?
Yeah.
Which he's deserved. I mean, he had a phenomenal year, but
and then I'm assuming they do the same thing with Fletcher Cox because I feel like every other year they restructure Fletcher Cox's deal.
Yeah, they did it. I think they did it before this season.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's tough. I guess, like you said, they're not going to be able to afford to to extend Barnett to a big deal with BG and Cox on the line. So they're gonna have some tough decisions to make and on both lines, because then you got Kelsey, who's a year or two away from retirement. Brooks is getting old. Johnson's getting old. Who's the left tackle of the future?
Yeah, what are they going to do with
Dillard?
Is it Dillard or Mailata?
It's got to be Mailata. I'd imagine they're going to trade Dillard, probably for pennies, which is a shame. But it is what it is. It's just reality of the Philadelphia Eagles at this point.
Yeah, because you're not going to move Mailata to right tackle after you just spent the past 3 years teaching him left tackle. And Dillard pass protector. So what, do you move Dillard to left guard, Semi Wall to center when Kelsey retires? I don't know.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of uncertainty with the Eagles. Lots of uncertainty.
I can almost say this guarantee. There's going to be two or three guys in your top 10 highest paid players on this roster currently that aren't going to be here next year.
Of course.
Because financially, that's how it's got to be.
It's a good thing, though, because a lot of – I mean, I will say I want to revert my stance on Cox a little bit, because Cox is, talked about a lot of times as the second best D tackle in the league behind Donald. And that for many years has been a consensus, and it just seems like the past couple years, I think last year he was hurt, but this year he was pretty healthy, and it just seems like, I don't know, it just seems like the past 2-3 years he hasn't been quite as productive as he used to be. And I don't know if stats back that up, but eye test wise, that's what it feels like.
Well, I can tell you stats do kind of back it up. I'll read off the 2018 year, which was the best season of his career, where his first team All-Pro. 10.5 sacks, 12 tackles for loss, 34 quarterback hits. So entirely since then, the last 2 years, 10 sacks, so fewer sacks in the last 2 years than they had in 2018 alone. 14 tackles for losses, only 2 more tackles for losses in the past 2 years than in 2018. 19 quarterback hits. That's 19 quarterback hits in 2 years compared to 34 in 2018. So the drop-off, the reason why I say he's like 5th or 6th is because the drop-off from the last 2 years has been huge.
Huge.
Now, do I think that Cox could really get after it next year? Yeah, definitely. I mean, he should still be that same player. I mean, he was healthy. He's going to have 2 full seasons or off seasons of health at this point. And if he doesn't, then you're looking at a Ertz type player who is the best at his position, or second best at his position, and fell off. What were you giving me that look for?
Was okay. I thought you were saying is second best at his position. I'm like, I don't know that I'd put Ertz in the top 5 of tight ends after this season. Hit a very down year. Granted, injury ridden, but still very down year.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I'm just saying, because the year he broke the catches record, it was him and Kelsey. And then, so like Cox, first team All-Pro with Donald 2 years ago, and hasn't done as much this year. And now there's talks about Ertz getting traded. So I wouldn't be surprised if Cox falls in that same mold.
Yeah.
He made All-Pro teams in 2014, 2015, 2017, 2018. He's not made an All-Pro team either the last 2 years. And I think part of that has been the emergence of younger guys like DeForest Buckner and Chris Jones as well, kind of pushing him back down the order. So I don't know. Cox is he's still important, he's still valuable, but I don't know. Cox, and Justin says Cox was banged up at the beginning of 2019, still recovering from foot injury, no excuse this year.
Yeah. So exactly what I just said.
Yeah, a lot of his numbers from this year look almost exactly the same to last year, except for the sack total went up a little bit. But other than that, a lot of his numbers are kind of repeated the same way over. So it's a little bit.
He's gonna, if he doesn't, he's probably gonna fall into the category, either show up next year or get moved. And, we're going to see Ertz get traded, more than likely. Alshon and Djak's cut. And then I'm trying to really think about the younger guys who need to show up. I guess Barnett, Sweat. Hopefully Singleton has another good year. Other than Singleton,
you can always get a J-Jaw sighting. Other
than Singleton, I can't name another linebacker who was good this year. And then the whole secondary is a mess, and it's gonna be at the start next year. McWood with the ACL. We'll see Darius Slay. and who knows who knows who's going to be the other safety and corner. So.
Yeah.
And you look at special teams, and we could talk about special teams too, and how we need to have rework that part of the team.
All of it. It's crazy.
It's crazy. In what, 3 years, Super Bowl, the chumps.
Yeah. No kidding. I don't know about you guys. I'm looking forward to the draft. Not even for the Eagles, but just overall, because I think it's an interesting class. Because obviously not as talented as last year, in my opinion, but it's gonna be interesting to see. I can't wait to start doing those mock drafts again.
Oh gosh, I can almost guarantee you all my mock drafts will have Jamar Chase or Devontae Smith going number 6.
Yeah, I mean, you could run it through the what me and Sam use is the Draft Network, and I've been running through the past couple nights, and Chase or Smith are there for the taking, just the way it's rolling out. So it should work out in the Eagles' favor.
No brainer.
You have one of the more boring draft situations where you basically know who you're going to take. If you're still sitting there at 6th overall, because there will be at least one of those 2 receivers there.
Of course.
Better be. Who knows how he's going to shock the world, and he's going to pass. All the receivers are going to be on the board at 6. Going to pass on Chase, going to pass on Smith, and going to take Waddle.
Well, that would be a terrible pick either.
That would be a Howie Roseman special. I'm nothing against Waddle. I'm just saying.
Waddle's biggest appeal for Waddle right now is the pure athleticism, the speed, all that kind of stuff. Be careful with Waddle, because Henry Ruggs last year, the appeal with Henry Ruggs was the speed, the athleticism, it was all the potential, and you didn't have the polish of a Jerry Jeudy who had the numbers, who had the production tape to back it all up. Waddle right now, a lot of it is still kind of the promise of what he could become, not necessarily what we have seen him do already. So I'm a little worried about Waddle. Waddle worries me just a little bit because he fits that mold, the kind of guy where it's he'll make the jump, and then he never does. So I'm a little worried about that.
Maybe he'll show out tonight and change all our minds. He's supposed to play.
He could do that.
Oh my God.
He's a game time decision, I heard. So
he is a game time. So
wow, I didn't know he was going to play.
But no, I'm just. I mean, look, if before Devontae Smith won the Heisman, I said Jamar Chase is the no-brainer top wide receiver, and maybe that's changed, maybe it hasn't, but just give me someone just give the fans someone we can salivate over a little bit, you know?
It'd be nice for a change. We'll see.
All right, guys. Is there anything else we want to talk about here before we wrap this up? We've been going for a little bit over an hour now.
Not tonight, but
I'm sure in the coming weeks we're gonna have plenty to talk about across the NFL.
Well, there were plenty of Eagles, I'm sure.
Oh, of course. So, yeah, I'm all good. Sammy, I look forward to hopefully we can hop on for some draft stuff in the coming months, because that was a good time last year. I felt like we.
Yeah, no, I'd be down for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I'm all set. I think we talked about it's just going to be an interesting offseason is the last thing I'm going to say.
Yeah, I'd like to remind everyone, fire Howie. But for now, thank you all for tuning in. I appreciate you guys listening to the video. Hopefully we have more live streams up later this year where we can talk more Eagles and more about the NFL draft. For now, thank you all for listening.